Alright, I've got another apology to make. It's been a week, but you may still get hints of an accent. I'm sorry about that. It's been dying down, but Scar's still been making fun of me all week for it. Though she's kept slipping into French, and it's hilarious. And Andrew sounds like he's from Jamaica. Oh man, so weird. That's the first apology. Second, this one's a big jump. And I've tried to think of ways that we could lead up into these next few chapters, but I don't know how to make that happen. Because like everything right before this was really boring. I sat on the traveling platform making rock gates for weeks. And so it kind of feels like this is coming out of nowhere, I feel like. But honestly, that's how it felt when it happened. So I don't feel as bad about that. So get ready. Things are wrapping up around here.
Took you long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot.
Chapter 30. We walked across the frosty ground, the air still so cold that it stung my lungs as I breathed in. Blaze and I walked across the staging grounds, looking out across the east field, just to the side of Demias Krai. There were basically glorified tents set up all throughout, and people were beginning to gather for the battle that we'd always known was coming, and we'd been training for, but somehow still felt like it'd come out of nowhere. We came up to one of the tents, which was decorated by orange gold emblems, and I left Blaze outside to step into the tent, just as Kessel finished talking with the 14 original seers from the Seer Guard. She said, "I know you know what you're doing, but we want you to stay safe. But you're going to do us good, and thank you." She noticed that I'd stepped in, and she thanked the Seer Guard, and as she left, she turned to me and she said, "Be destined, G." And I said, "Be destined." And I turned to the Seer Guard myself. They were clumped together on seats in the cold. The tent had a few red ISO lamps in places, but they were crude. We hadn't had a lot of time to figure those out. They did some to help the warmth, but the camouflage cloaks that the Seer Guard had were helping as well. They wore those over combat gear, and the camouflage cloaks weren't really to use until we got into the world of decision, or into the world of becoming, sorry. But they did them good here, too, now. And I turned to the group and I said, how are you feeling about today? And they seemed ecstatic. That was kind of surprising to me. I was more terrified for my own part, but I guess they were doing what they'd already been doing for weeks and months up to this point, so I guess I shouldn't have been so surprised that they were as ready as they were. And I just want to remind you everything that we want you doing today. I said you've got to run early this morning, and don't go too hard. This is just to finish things up and to warm you up for everything that's coming through the rest of the day. We really need you to get going hard as soon as we get into Malat. And once the forces have come in, they're the distraction. You're there to take down all of the gates that are in the city and purge the rest of it. But until then, just focus on your next mission. And I turned to Ferendo and I said, you've got the rest of it. And he said, yes, we do. And he stood up and I said, you heard G. Take this lightly and keep ready for the rest of the day. We know you've been going hard for the last while, but we want you siring harder than ever before for this. And Diamane said, we could do this in our sleep. Heck, Axel has. And Axel said, it was the one time. Besides, I still took out more gates that day than the rest of you. And they all kind of laughed together. I said, well, great, any questions before we get going? And Chessa raised her hand and I said, yes. And she said, when can we get going? Like, the sooner that we get, like, the sooner that Chirenta tires out the tyrite, the sooner I can take his place, and I want to get out of this cold. I said, all right, let's get going. And they hopped up ready to go, still slipping in to their pockets the emergency gates that Kessel had just given them. They weren't travelers, but we wanted everyone that we could, especially our special forces, to have those gates in case a traveler could, like, help take them back or get to them or anything like that. We came outside where the hoverbikes were waiting, and the ones who were on first duty for this small morning run were, like, hopped onto the bikes, took off the cloaks, and put on siring vests that Kessel had made, as Ferendo had suggested. They helped to sire easier, which was nice when you were siring for 12 hours a day. These seers were incredible, and they'd made such a difference. Ferendo wasn't in the first group, he was in the reserves, and as the sires went off to our temporary traveling platform to be sent through, I asked Ferendo how he felt about how things were going, and he said, pretty good. They shouldn't have a hard time finishing up that circle that we've made, and, in the afternoon we'll get into Malat and get through the 3 populated areas that we need to get through, and by that point all of the gates will be gone within at least a 200-mile radius of anywhere that the Profithians are on the World of Becoming. He said, I think we can actually do this, and that was exciting to hear. It had been a long time in coming. The last weeks, our sires had just been on the World of Becoming, taking out gates. And he said, I just feel sorry for you. We've been able to go around under these beautiful skies and practice our siring. You've been sitting making gates all day long. And I said, it has been a little bit hard. I said, but I also got to recruit Master Chief, Deathwing, Superman, and a bunch of others. And so it's been a pretty exciting week. And he said, I don't know who any of those people are, but I'm glad you've been doing it. I said, yeah, well, I think we've got this. I said, I've got to go check on some others, but good luck. And I left him, hopped back on a Blaze, and we rode across the field to another of the tents that was further out from the city to make our military operations more accessible from the rest of the staging field. And I came to probably the biggest tent that was out there. It was undecorated, but you could tell what it was because of all of the people that were coming in and out, messengers going here, back and forth. It was still a while before our armies were going to fully assemble, but some squads had begun to group up and people were making their way out here, bringing out red ISO heat lamps. The Serremanes were fully devoted to this cause, bringing things from their own homes to make ready, and yeah, we were ready for a long day. But the point wasn't to kill all the Profithians or anything, it was to get rid of those gates, to take down the ISO, and everything else was just a distraction from that. Anyway, I stepped into the gate, and I saw Sestian and some of his counselors there talking, Midif was there, the son of Banton, the young Profithian from the world of decision. And it was still odd to see a Profithian in our circles and in our planning meetings. But it also kind of felt right. We were going to be getting a lot of help from the world of decision today, and that was so good for us. We needed that. And they were looking over a map of Malat that our spies had put together, talking about our different sections and where we'd be sending different squads. And Sestian, for his own part, was seated at the table in a plush chair. Plushy? I don't know. In a nice chair. And he was eating the breakfast as the others were talking. Other people still saw him as prideful. But I'd come to learn, and especially in the last few weeks, that Sestian was just effective. He was taking it easy now, because he knew that in the heat of the day, things were going to get hard, people were going to be running out of patience, and that was when he was most needed. And so he was getting ready for that and eating breakfast while he worked, instead of eating breakfast and then working. He was a good man. Hard to work with sometimes, but a good man. And I said, "Gee, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I just wanted to make sure you're all good, and I wanted to know what you need from me today." And he said, "Win the war." As he chewed a piece of his fruit. And I said, "Well, yes, but how do you want me to do that?" And he said, "Win the war, I mean it." He said, "You're the kind of person that I can't command, frankly. Because whatever I tell you to do, you're going to end up doing what you feel you need to do, whether I've commanded you to do it or not. And you're going to take other people with you. I've already accounted for you in my plans, and we're all going to be guided by destiny today. If I need you somewhere, we will let you know. But do what you need to do." I thanked him for that, and I said, "All right." Yeah, everything looked good here. And so I left and went back toward the city to keep checking on things. Serremeans were making their way out to the staging grounds across the frosty February floor. And I tried to stand up tall, and it seemed to give them strength, watching me and Blaze pass the way. I was wearing my suit that I'd worn during Nightfall and on most of our other missions, and it was a symbol for them, and it gave them hope and strength to know that destiny was guiding us today. And they didn't fully know their role. They knew they'd be protecting Serremea, and I was grateful that they were willing to sacrifice for their people. But yeah, I made my way into the city itself, and through the people that were gathering here, we had troops set all throughout the city as well, because we knew there were going to be Zelans, Profithians, the green ones, that would be coming in and trying to attack the city, and so we had our reserves here. It was hard to split our forces between who we were sending into the world of becoming and who we were keeping here, but we also had Profithians on the world of decision. They were also protecting their areas because they needed it. So I went into the city and found one of the bunkers that we had set up there, and went to the person who was letting people in, because the people were beginning to make their way, the women, the children, and the ones who couldn't fight, though there were plenty of women taking care of things as well. And we had all kinds of people in the medical tents and running messages for the leaders. This was a full-scale effort for the people, and it was incredible to watch all of this. But the person letting people into the bunker wore furs against the cold. And I said, "Hana, how are things coming here?" And she said, "As well as we could have asked for. Fate is on our side today." And she said, "Even still, we're not going to make the deadline, but it will be close." And I said, "That's all I could ask for. Our armies won't get into place until half an hour after the deadline anyway." They'd kind of anticipated that. But everything seemed to be good here. There would be guards inside the bunker. In case Profithians got inside somehow, we'd have them patrolling the streets as well. Not right in front, because we didn't want to tell the Profithians right where to come. But yeah, that was set. I went and I checked 2 other bunkers, and then I called Scar to see how her bunkers were doing, and they were all set. The World of Decision, they were all ready to go. I thought, all right, great. That is pretty much everything. And I gave Andrew another call. I called him earlier this morning and woken him up because he hadn't been awake already. Hopefully he'd been doing the things that we needed him to be doing. And by this point I was coming back onto the staging grounds. Blaze was making his way along. And it was warming up. Still very cold, but warming up. And Andrew said, gee, I have a question for you. I said, okay, first, do you have the people there? And he said, yes, almost all of them are here. He said, but there's one of them I want to talk to you about, Jace the Mind Sculptor. I said, okay. And I said, yeah, he's a dangerous one. We want to make sure that we take good care of him. I can take care of him. And Andrew said, oh, well, I kind of wanted to be the one to bring him through. And I said, Andrew, he is, as we said, dangerous. Like, I'm surprised that Destiny's letting him in, because I don't know whose side he's going to be fighting on. And Andrew said, well, they'll probably just prevent the Profithians from fighting. I said, tell me you believe that, sincerely. And he said, okay, but still, I want to be the one to bring him through. I said, all right, but you have to be so careful. By this point, I'd come out to where he was, and I could see the people that he was with. And I hopped off of Blaze, and he finally got off the phone. Took off the phone to talk to me. And I looked over the people that he'd gathered. A few dozen of the best warriors that pop culture has to offer. And then some others. And there was a traveler with Andrew as well that had helped him bring people through, and together they'd be sending people through because Andrew didn't have access to Serremea, only through Earth. But yeah, they were ready to go. And I said, wait, who invited the Power Rangers? And he said, look, I know the shows make them look lame, but they're super powerful. And I said, I don't care how powerful they are. Destiny did not clear them. I said, we're not letting anybody fight in this war for us unless Destiny has cleared them and said that they will survive this and that they will not be maimed. And he said, but they're so, they can hold their own. And I said, I understand that. But Siring, I could tell they would not make it through this. And we could not let other worlds suffer because of our war. They said, you have to take him back. And he was sad about that, but he went and talked to them. While he did, I turned to the rest of the group. And I said, thank you so much for being willing to help us. We've explained to you the war that we're fighting, the people that we're fighting against. He said, as you fight today, please don't kill them if you don't have to. We're trying to stop them. Their traditions are wrong, and we're just trying to prevent them from hurting others. For their sake, and for yours, and for your world's, don't do any more with them than you have to. We want you out of this alive, and we have the assurance that you will. But be wise. I didn't get a cheer from them, but I didn't need to. Their presence here was all I could have asked for. I left them to Andrew and to another traveler to take care of. And Blaze and I made our way out into the main field among the rest of everyone else. We went to the Seer Guard because that was where I felt most comfortable. I knew them the most. And they just finished their circle. We now had 200 miles around anywhere that the Profithians were. And we were going to keep building that border out and protecting it. But today we needed to take care of all the populated areas. take out their ISO and cover it all up with fighting. And then take people back as soon as we could. Take our people back as soon as we could. I made a few last calls to make sure everything else was where it needed to be. And then I patted Blaze's side and I said, it's now or never. And he used Fire Blast and sent 3 fiery stars up into the sky, where they convulsed and turned to smoke. And the sound of the fire raging was replaced with a cry that came up across the entire field. And all of the Serremeans took up the cheer, shouting out. The travelers opened the gates, and people began to disappear into the world of becoming. As our forces disappeared, I pulled out a gate of my own and opened it up, sending Blaze and myself through. But we didn't come through the world of becoming. We came into Deepholm. The large cavern ceiling was just darkness above us. It was so tall. The only lighting that we had was from the magma that crept through cracks and flowed around us. And I could see looming in the distance the figure that we'd come for, over 100 feet tall, Deathwing the Destroyer. He recognized me this time as I urged Blaze forward and we galloped towards him. And Deathwing sent a wave of magma towards us, and I used my siren to create a path through it for us to run through, and Blaze clipped along this hard black stone as we ran toward the dragon. And even though Blaze had heat protection abilities, I could tell he was still a little bit skittish around this dragon, and I didn't blame him. He was absolutely horrifying. Just curved, evil dragon. When we got within range, I held my gate to Serremea, and I overlapped the 2 worlds as far as I could, and sent Deathwing and myself and Blaze through. And with the other gate in hand, I overlapped the world of becoming and Serremea, and I sent Deathwing on to where we needed him to fight. His cry cut off from the field as soon as it had started, but just that second that he'd been on the field left those who were still on the field frozen in fear. He was gone, and I watched through the gate to see the havoc that he was wreaking there. I wasn't going to send him in the city where the civilians might be. We sent him near the staging grounds of the Zellans themselves, where he would intimidate the soldiers, cause a little bit of damage. I wouldn't let him hurt anyone too bad. And he hadn't technically agreed to help us, but I knew that he liked to destroy things, and Destiny promised that he would be fine through this, which didn't surprise me at all. And I could see he was having a ball, breaking up the ground, heating the jungle, and causing magma to come up through cracks. He caused some damage on the ISO generators that were there, that were corrupting the ISO. That was another of the big reasons that we were fighting this. And it was good that he was damaging some of those. But before long, he turned toward the city, and I was not going to have him hurting civilians. And so I pulled him back through to Serremea and on to Deepholm. I couldn't quite overlap the 3 worlds because he was so big. I'd gotten to where if he was normal-sized, I could have done it, but he was big and powerful enough that I had to do it one at a time. And it took me a minute after all of that to recuperate. I got a drink and I said, Blaze, you ready? And he whinnied. So I pulled out a gate to the world of becoming that I'd made that linked us to a different part of the city where the fighting would be some of the fiercest. I overlapped the 2 worlds and lines of light and color shot out around me. The world of Serremea collapsed and kind of resolved itself into the world of becoming, but it didn't really resolve because there was so much chaos around. We were in the middle of the decomposing city. There were little pods of Prophithians and Serremeans running this way and that, firing on each other. I hopped off of Blaze so that we could work separately. I watched as Superman flew through, using his laser vision to cut Prophithian guns in half, and he zoomed around a corner, and the Green Goblin flew around another corner. We had not invited him. And he threw an explosive that brought a part of a building down toward a Serremean group, and I used my siren to block it, and they ran out of the way, and I pushed the rubble off to the side, and with my siren I caught the Green Goblin's board and threw him down to the ground. He toppled off of the board and pulled out a series of bombs and threw them at me. And I caught those with my siren as the Green Goblin grabbed his board and hit a button on the Traveler that the Prophithians had given him. We weren't the only ones that had called in reinforcements. But I caught the bombs and I held them as they exploded, holding in the explosion. And then I pulled out Talonthorn and raced to join the fight, just trying to see where it would be best to fight. I looked as Blaze was drawing fire from a Prophithian tank, and he was firing back on it, torching the thing. As he drew close, he leapt up and kicked down on the barrel of the gun, smashing the tank's cannon, and he pounded on the thing, denting it as he threw himself into the air. He slammed back down on the street and spun around just as a shot from a side street took Blaze. End of chapter 30.